I'm Marin, 27, a music producer and the family's black sheep. The ballroom at the Charleston Marriott was bathed in soft champagne light, glittering off hanging crystal chandeliers and wine glasses clinking from every table. Rows of chairs had been cleared to make space for the dance floor, which shimmered like water under the shifting lights. Tall floral centerpieces, all ivory roses and baby's breath, stood like silent guards along the perimeter. The walls hummed with bass. The beats filtered through expensive speakers. I stood just past the bar, my heels sinking slightly into the thick carpet, arms crossed, watching guests pour in with silk dresses and polished shoes, the scent of peonies and Prosecco in the air. I wasn't invited to the rehearsal dinner. I wasn't listed in the program. I was supposed to show up late, clap politely, eat the catered chicken, and disappear. That was the unspoken expectation. But I came anyway. My cousin Bree had texted me the day before, saying, "You'll want to be there. Trust me." So I waited, watching the bride, my Aunt Tricia, glide in with her third husband like she was royalty. The crowd erupted in applause, and then the DJ dropped the track. My track. The soft piano intro slid into the room like a whisper, then rose into a familiar haunting synth. My spine stiffened. It was unmistakable. Ashes of Gold, a track I composed, produced, and released independently last fall. And they used it for the first dance. I blinked, my throat going dry. It wasn't just the melody. It was the full mastered version with my trademark vocal textures layered in. I hadn't licensed it to anyone. It wasn't on any public wedding playlist. And yet, here it was, filling the air, while my aunt smiled blissfully, clutched by her new husband, as if my work belonged to her moment. "Excuse me," I said, approaching the DJ booth. The guy behind the table didn't even look up. His fingers adjusted a dial. "Hey," I said again. Firmer. "That's my song." He finally glanced at me, annoyed. "Huh, this track. You're playing my song without permission." He paused, removed one earphone. "It's royalty-free. I got it online." "No," I snapped, heart hammering. "That's not royalty-free. That's mine. I made it. I can prove it." He shrugged. "Take it up with whoever sent the playlist. I'm just pressing play." I stood there, stunned, as the bridge swelled the part with layered reverse harmonies that took me 3 sleepless nights to perfect. My aunt twirled in her satin gown. The crowd clapped, and not one person turned toward me. I walked back toward the corner, pulse thudding in my ears. Bree rushed over. "I told you to come," she said under her breath. "I didn't think they'd actually—" I started. "They asked me for something ethereal for the first dance. I suggested your track. But I didn't know they'd rip it and not credit you." "They didn't just not credit me," I said. "They erased me." Bree hesitated. "Want me to cause a scene?" I gave a dry laugh. I don't think this crowd would even notice. But I wasn't just a forgotten niece in a black cocktail dress tonight. What they didn't know, what they never bothered to ask, was that I'd just signed a licensing deal with a major indie distributor. The contract was airtight. And I didn't come alone. A hand tapped my shoulder. "Miss Adler?" a voice asked. Deep. Professional. I turned. My lawyer, Theo Miles, in a sleek charcoal suit and wireframe glasses, stood at my side. Uninvited, but here, just like me. I nodded. "It's time." He stepped forward through the crowd, straight to the DJ. "Excuse me," Theo said, flashing credentials. "You're going to stop playing this track. Immediately." The DJ frowned. "Why?" "Because that song is copyrighted intellectual property belonging to Miss Adler, and you are currently in violation of federal copyright law. Keep playing it, and you're opening this venue up to legal action. Shall I speak with the manager?" The music stuttered. The room turned. "What's going on?" someone whispered. The DJ, red-faced, fumbled with the controls. The music cut mid-beat, a high note vanishing into awkward silence. The dance floor froze. My aunt, mid-step, stared at the speakers. Someone dropped a glass. Whispers rose like steam. Then Theo turned toward the crowd. "To clarify," he said, calm but clear. "The song just played was created by Maren Adler, a professional music producer and the legal rights holder. It was used here tonight without her permission." All eyes turned, and I stood there, suddenly noticed. As if the walls of the room had shifted, people stared. Cousins who hadn't spoken to me in years, aunts who always called me moody, uncles who never asked what I actually did. Even Aunt Trisha's smile cracked. The silence held, and I felt the shift. If you've ever been erased from your own work, if family ever acted like you were invisible, leave a comment. Tell me where you're watching from. And hit, like if you've ever had to reclaim your voice in a room that tried to silence you, because I'm not done yet. The silence didn't last long. It broke under the sharp clink of my aunt's heel turning on the floor as she stormed across the room toward us, satin layers brushing the tiles, veil pinned askew. Her face was red with confusion, or was it embarrassment? Probably both. "Marin," she hissed, voice low but sharp. "What on earth is going on?" I straightened. "You played my track without asking. Without credit. That's illegal." "Aunt Trisha." She blinked, her heavy lashes fluttering. "We didn't know it was yours." Theo cleared his throat. "It's registered under her name with both ASCAP and US. Copyright. We have timestamps, audio stems, and distribution contracts. This is not a misunderstanding. This is infringement." Her eyes narrowed at him. "And who are you?" "My attorney," I answered. Her lips parted, flustered. I could almost see the gears in her mind grinding, trying to decide whether to plead ignorance, shift the blame to the DJ, or throw the whole issue under the wedding rug. "I don't want a scene," she said quietly. "You know that. You made one the second you turned my work into your moment." I replied, voice steady. A few relatives hovered in the background, not daring to step in but visibly listening. Bree stood behind me, arms crossed, brows raised like she was watching the best reality show of the year. Aunt Trisha glanced around, aware of the attention, her smile reassembled, cold and graceful. "Let's not ruin the evening. We'll talk later." "All right." "No," I said. "We'll handle this now." She flinched. "It's my wedding, Marin, and that was my art." A long pause. "You've always had to make everything about you," she muttered, stepping closer. "From the time you were little, crying at every recital, fidgeting at every holiday dinner I cut in. I was a kid, and you never noticed the good, just the inconvenient." Her lips curled. "You left this family years ago. Don't come back just to cause drama." I felt my throat tighten, but I didn't let the emotion rise. Instead, I handed her the printed cease and desist Theo had prepped in case things got sticky. "I came because you used me," I said, "and I'm tired of pretending that's okay." She didn't take the paper, just stood there, face frozen, bouquet trembling slightly in her grip. Behind us, the music remained off. The DJ sat back, arms folded. A low murmur was starting again, guests whispering, speculating. "Come on," Theo said gently to me. "Let's step out." We turned away. I didn't look back. As we walked past the entrance toward the parking lot, I caught sight of the table seating chart. My name wasn't there. Breeze was buried somewhere near the kitchen entrance. Outside, the air hit cool and sharp, like a slap. I inhaled deeply, finally allowing myself to feel something other than adrenaline. Theo lit a cigarette and offered one. I declined. That went better than expected, he said. You think so? No one called security. No one yelled. And now they know who you are. I never wanted a moment like that. I said, I wanted respect. Quiet respect. Not a spotlight apology. Still, sometimes it takes fire to get people to see smoke. I smiled faintly. Bree came out minutes later, heels in hand, cheeks flushed. You were legendary, she said. Like Netflix series material. Grandma looked like she was going to faint. Great, I muttered. I mean it. I'm proud of you. I met her eyes. There was no mockery, no pity, just fierce loyalty. And I realized something. I wasn't angry at just Aunt Tricia. I was angry at years of this. Years of holiday dinners where I played background piano like a hotel lounge musician. Years of being told to get a real job. Years of having to prove that sound design was art, that beats were storytelling, that I didn't need to be on a stage to be legitimate. When I released Ashes of Gold, I didn't promote it to my family. I didn't send links or invite listens. I was too tired, too protective of it. It was the most vulnerable thing I'd ever made. And somehow, even without asking, they found it and thought it was theirs to use. That stung. Let's go, I said finally. I need a drink. Somewhere without roses or speeches. We ended up at a low-lit bar by the marina, music humming faintly through brick walls, glasses sweating on the table. I sat between Theo and Bree, watching boats bob in the dark water outside the window. Do you think she'll sue you for emotional damage? Bree joked. I snorted. She'd have to admit what she did first. Theo leaned in. You handled it with dignity. Marin, people saw that. And if you want to pursue damages, we can talk. But you made your point. I just wanted to be seen, I said quietly. Not celebrated, just acknowledged. Bree reached for my hand. You were always the quiet genius. They didn't know what they had. Still don't. Maybe I shouldn't have gone, I murmured. Maybe you had to. Outside. The marina lights flickered on the surface like small stars sinking into blackness. I let the quiet settle, the weight of it all finally pressing into me. Years of rejection, a song written in loneliness, a room that never clapped when I entered but applauded when my sound filled their ears. And now, maybe, the silence after was my own kind of music. The next morning, I woke up to 12 missed calls, 9 voicemails, and a Facebook tag in a blurry photo of me walking out of the ballroom, Theo close behind, looking like an episode finale of some legal drama. I stared at my phone, thumb hovering over the screen. I didn't listen to the voicemails. I didn't return the calls. I just watched my aunt's name flash again and again like a mosquito trapped under glass. Instead, I rolled out of bed, tossed on an old hoodie, and padded barefoot to the kitchen in Bree's apartment, where I'd crashed for the weekend. She was already up, cross-legged on the couch with a bowl of cereal and a wicked grin. You're trending in our family group chat, she said, mouth half full. Uncle Jeff called you a self-obsessed copyright princess. Grandma asked what copyright means. It's chaos. I poured coffee into a chipped mug. That explains the voicemails. Also, she added, holding up her phone, Tricia posted a public status saying, and I quote, sometimes, people choose bitterness over joy. Love wins anyway. With a photo of her and the groom, I rolled my eyes. She's pretending nothing happened. Of course. That's how they survive. Pretend you're the problem. It's easier than saying I messed up. I sat beside her, still half asleep. The weight of last night settling differently now, not heavy, but hollow. You think she's embarrassed, I asked. She's furious, but mostly that you didn't play the role. You were supposed to sit, smile, and disappear. That's what I always do. But not last night. I sip my coffee. So what happens now? You keep doing what you're doing, and maybe next time someone hears your music, they won't think it just fell from the sky. Later that day, I got a DM request from someone I hadn't heard from since middle school, Camille Whitaker, the girl who used to steal my gel pens and tell everyone I smelled like old guitar cases. The message read, "Hey Marin, just saw that clip from the wedding. Are you still making music? I work for a podcast collective now, and we're looking for original sound design. LMK if you're interested." I laughed out loud. Of course. Isn't that always how it goes? You're nothing until someone sees you in a spotlight they didn't set up, and then suddenly, they remember your name. I didn't reply right away. Instead, I pulled out my laptop, opened my DAW, and played the Ashes of Gold master file, just to remind myself, just to feel the weight of it again. The intro was quiet, almost too quiet. I remembered laying on the floor the night I composed it, headphones on, breathing with the rhythm like it might tether me to something real. I wrote it after a panic attack. I layered the strings with breath samples. I carved the beat from the sound of my front door closing. They thought it was just a vibe. But it was me. All of me. I spent the rest of the day in Bree's apartment, answering a few DMs from actual artists, not childhood bullies. 2 indie directors asked about licensing. A boutique agency inquired about a custom score for a brand campaign. None of that would have happened if I'd stayed quiet. By evening, the group chat screenshots had turned into screenshots of my Bandcamp page being shared by distant cousins I hadn't seen in years. One message stood out, though. From my cousin Lauren Trisha's daughter, Marin. I had no idea that was your track. I'm sorry. I sent the playlist to the DJ but thought it was just ambient music Bree sent me. I didn't mean to disrespect you. And for what it's worth, it was the most beautiful part of the night. I stared at the screen for a while before replying. Thanks, Lauren. I appreciate that. It didn't fix everything, but it was something. Around 10 p.m., my phone rang again. This time, I picked up. Hello? It was Aunt Trisha. I thought you might finally answer, she said coolly. I wasn't sure I would. A pause. Then, do you feel better after embarrassing me in front of everyone? No, I said, voice even. I feel tired. Look, I didn't know it was yours. If I had, you would have asked permission. Yes, she snapped. I would have asked, probably. But why couldn't you just say something quietly? Why bring a lawyer? Because I've tried quietly my whole life. I said, and nobody ever heard me. Another long silence. I didn't mean to hurt you, she said, softer. I just wanted a beautiful wedding, and I wanted a life where I mattered to this family. I replied, but I stopped waiting for that a long time ago. She didn't respond. I'm not pressing charges, I said. I'm not here to ruin anything, but I won't be ignored anymore. There was a shuffle, maybe a sigh. Okay. Then she hung up. No apology, just that single word, okay, like a door barely left ajar. And somehow, that felt like the most honest moment we'd ever shared. Bree padded into the living room, holding 2 mugs of tea. Was that her? I nodded. Are you okay? I think so. We sat in silence, watching the steam curl from our cups. A soft hum came from her vinyl player in the corner, spinning some obscure folk album we both pretended to understand. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I had to prove anything. Not to them. Not even to myself. I thought back to a day when I was 13, sitting at a family barbecue, hunched over my mom's keyboard in the garage, while everyone else laughed outside. Trisha had walked in, heels clicking on the concrete, and said, "Still playing with those noises?" Huh. I hadn't replied, I just kept playing. Now, all these years later, those noises filled rooms she couldn't control, and maybe that was enough. Maybe the real win wasn't making them clap. It was walking away knowing the music still played with or without their applause. The following week, I flew back to New York. The city greeted me the way it always did, brutally. It was raining when I landed, and I had to wrestle my keyboard case into the back of a cab while my hair stuck to my face in thick, damp strands. The driver mumbled something about musicians and traffic, and I just nodded, too tired to argue. My apartment in Brooklyn still smelled faintly of sandalwood and static from my last overnight session. Dust shimmered in the warm amber light from the hallway as I stepped in and dropped my bag. The silence felt different now. Not lonely, more like room to breathe. I didn't unpack right away. I just sat on the edge of the couch, coat still on, and stared at the window. Across the street, a bakery was closing for the night, the soft clink of trays echoing faintly up from the sidewalk. My inbox had grown, not from family, from producers, creatives, people I didn't know, reaching out because they'd heard the story, some from that single 14-second video a guest uploaded of the wedding confrontation. It had spread without my permission, but for once, I didn't mind. The audio watermark in the clip clearly featured my name in the intro line. The irony was almost poetic. There was one email from a woman named Tala, a film director from Toronto. She wrote, "Marin, your song feels like what I want my entire next short film to sound like. I don't just want to license it. I want to work with you. I want to start with the sound, not the visuals. Are you open to that?" I reread it 5 times before replying. I told her yes, but then I closed my laptop, sat back, and let myself do something I hadn't done in a long time. I cried, not because I was sad, not even because I was relieved, just because I was finally feeling again without numbing it through work, or running from it in family silence. It was like years of being dismissed had finally found a way out of my chest. I curled into the throw blanket Bree gave me for Christmas, one of the only gifts that ever came wrapped in both warmth and understanding. And I fell asleep on the couch. The next morning, I woke to sunlight hitting my face, fractured through the blinds, golden and sharp. I made a pot of coffee and sat down at my workstation, hands hovering over the keys. No pressure, no expectations, just presence. I started building a new project. No name, no audience in mind, just layers of quiet textures, reversed chimes, the sound of my own voice breathing low vowels into the mic. I sampled the rain hitting my window and looped it into a rhythm. My heartbeat found its way into the low end. I didn't know what it would become. I just knew I was making it for me. Around noon, I got a text from my mom. Just one sentence. I saw the clip. "Call me when you're ready." It was the first message I'd received from her in 2 months. I didn't call right away. Not because I was angry. I wasn't. But I needed to stay in the space I'd carved out. I wasn't ready to give any part of myself back to that world, not yet. Instead, I texted her, "Thanks for reaching out. I'll call soon." Later that day, I went to a small listening room in the East Village, a community space where local artists gathered to share in-progress work. I hadn't been there in over a year. Last time, I brought a flash drive and chickened out before plugging it in. This time, I brought only myself. The space was dim, cozy, candles flickering low on the edges of worn wooden shelves. There were no spotlights, no introductions. Just one old soundboard and a rule: when it's your turn, you play something honest. I waited, breath shallow, as the person before me shared a jagged poem layered over cello. When it was my turn, I stood. "I'm Marin," I said quietly, "and this isn't finished, but it's the first thing I've made that feels like Home. Then I pressed play. The room filled with soft, pulsing echoes. My breath looped under the rain sample, a quiet synth swelling like a heartbeat underwater. The melody rose, strange and slow, like it was remembering how to trust again. No one clapped. That wasn't the point. But when the track faded, someone whispered, "Play it again." And I did. Afterward, a woman with streaks of silver in her hair came up to me and said, "That felt like sitting alone in a cathedral you didn't know you needed." I didn't even know how to respond. I just nodded, heart full. That night, walking home, I passed a jazz trio playing on the corner of Flatbush and 7th. They weren't trying to be noticed. They were just there, letting sound spill into the night air like something sacred. I dropped a 20 in their open case and kept walking. When I got home, I finally returned my mom's call. She picked up on the second ring. "Hi," she said. Her voice was quieter than I remembered. "Hi," I replied. A pause. "I didn't know that song was yours," she said. "But I should have. It sounded like you." I swallowed. "You've heard me play for 20 years. I know. And I'm sorry I didn't say it then." Her voice wavered. I didn't know how. Another pause. I let the silence speak for a moment. "I just wanted you to see me," I said. "I do now," she whispered. "I really do." We didn't say much else, but we didn't need to. After we hung up, I sat by the window with a blanket wrapped around my shoulders, the city flickering below like static on a screen. I thought about the wedding, about Trisha's cold smile, about the night I spent sobbing after a mix got rejected for being too abstract, about all the family dinners where I sat in silence, music still echoing in my head. And then I thought about that listening room, the stranger who asked me to play it again, and the thought hit me sharp, clean, final. You can spend a lifetime waiting for the wrong people to hear you, or you can let the right ones find you in the noise. I chose the latter. I didn't go home for Thanksgiving. Bree and I spent the day in her apartment with too much wine, frozen mac and cheese that we burned slightly, and a record player spinning Nina Simone on a loop. It was quiet, raw, and strangely peaceful. Neither of us dressed up. I wore sweatpants and a hoodie. She wrapped herself in a flannel blanket with holes in the corners. We didn't talk much about the wedding. We didn't have to. Instead, Bree pulled out an old box of photos from our childhood, ones we used to sneak from Grandma's attic, faded, curling at the edges. Some Polaroids with dates scribbled in shaky handwriting: July 1999 backyard play. December 2001, Marin's recital. She handed one to me. In it, I was maybe 9, sitting at a small upright piano in the corner of my uncle's basement, eyes closed, fingers stiff but serious on the keys. No one else was in the frame. "Do you remember that day?" she asked. I nodded slowly. Everyone else was outside. I was in there alone, practicing Clair de Lune because no one thought I'd actually play it right for Christmas. "You did, though." They talked over me the entire time. She didn't say anything, just reached for her glass and took a slow sip. I studied the photo again. My small hands, the chipped keys, the look on my face somewhere between concentration and hope. I hadn't even hit double digits yet, but I already knew I wasn't like the rest of them. They were good at noise gossip, charm, presence. I was good at silence, and what could be made from it. "Do you regret coming to the wedding?" Bree asked after a while. I set the photo down. "No, I regret waiting so long to stand up." She nodded, thoughtful. "They still talk about it. Grandma said it ruined the mood." Funny. I thought it clarified it. We both laughed. Later that night, I opened my email again. Tala, the filmmaker, had sent me a draft of the first scene for her short film. It was a single take of a woman walking through a snow-covered alley, city lights blurred in the distance, her breath visible as she paused, turned toward the camera, and didn't speak. Just stood there, defiant and hollow. "This is where I want your sound to begin," Tala wrote. "Not music, memory." I didn't answer right away. I stared at the screen, re-watching the clip on loop. I knew that look in the actress's eyes. I'd seen it in the mirror, and I knew what it needed. I pulled out my mic, dragged my laptop closer, and started layering sounds my breath again. But this time, rougher. Wind recorded from my fire escape, the low tap of fingernails on glass, a reversed piano chord that sounded like it was trying to inhale. Hours passed. I forgot to eat. I didn't care. I sent her the draft at 3:42 a.m. She replied at 3:48, "I'm crying. This is exactly what I didn't know I needed." I sat back and let the silence return. The next morning, I got another message. This time from one of my uncles, the one who always asked if I was still doing that music thing at Christmas. "I listened to your song. Didn't realize how talented you really are. Sorry if we overlooked you." It wasn't an apology. Not really, but it was more than I ever got before. A few days later, a royalty payment hit my account. One of my older tracks had been used in a Netflix reality show in Portugal. I laughed when I saw the breakdown. No one in my family knew. No one needed to. By mid-December, Tala and I were speaking every other day. We bonded quickly about silence, about making things that didn't always have an audience, about being women in spaces that expected polish but rarely welcomed depth. "You ever feel like no one wants what you actually are?" she asked one night over Zoom. "All the time? What do you do with that?" I thought for a long time. Then said, "I stopped asking them to want me." She nodded slowly. "Same." That call turned into a collaboration. She invited me to Toronto, said she wanted to film part of the score being made sound as performance. She called it. I hesitated. I wasn't used to being seen while I created. But something in me, a part that had been dormant for years, said yes. Before the trip, I stopped by my apartment rooftop. It had snowed the night before. The skyline stretched out beneath a veil of white noise and twinkling light. I brought a small recorder with me. The wind, the crunch of boots, the distant subway rumble, I captured it all. I didn't know what it would become, but I wanted it. Just after midnight, my phone buzzed again. A message from Lauren. "Hey, just wanted you to know that Trisha has been telling everyone she helped launch your career by playing your song at the wedding." I tried to correct her, but you know how she is. I stared at the screen for a long time, then typed back, "Let her. I'm already somewhere she can't follow." It wasn't meant to be cruel, just true. I packed my gear the next day. Headphones, microphones, backup drives, and a photo, the one Bree gave me, 9-year-old me on that basement piano, still believing she could make something real. When I arrived in Toronto, Tala met me with a scarf and a coffee and said, "We're building this around you, around the sound of truth." I smiled. Not a big smile, just enough to let it in. That night, in the makeshift studio she'd arranged, I layered the rooftop snow into the closing track. I added the wind from Brooklyn, the breathing from the wedding, the moment the music cut off mid-dance, twisted into a dissonant echo. It wasn't revenge, it was release. And when we played it back, the room went quiet. The kind of quiet I used to run from. The kind of quiet that finally felt like home. The premiere was held in a minimalist black box theater in downtown Toronto. No red carpet, no velvet ropes, no influencers with selfie sticks, just folding chairs, thick velvet curtains, and a screen set against a raw brick wall. The kind of place where silence was sacred and everyone who walked in already knew how to listen. Tala greeted me at the entrance, her coat dusted with snow, eyes bright with nerves. "You ready?" she whispered. I nodded, even though I wasn't. I don't think I'd ever really been ready for anything, but I'd learned how to show up anyway. She introduced me before the film began, not as a composer or a guest, but simply, "This is Maren Adler." She didn't just score this film, she haunted it, and we're better for it. There was soft applause, no spotlight, no expectations. The lights dimmed, and then my sound began. No melody at first, just breath, echoing and close, then wind, warped and slow, like time folding in on itself, then the hush of city snow, the kind of sound that isn't really sound, it's memory stretched out across space. And then, finally, the music rose. I didn't watch the film. I watched the audience. Their eyes stayed wide, bodies still, no shifting in seats, no coughs. They were in it. They heard me. When the credits rolled, the room remained quiet. Some people were crying. Tala was wiping her eyes. A woman in the front row reached for someone's hand. And still, no one moved to stand. Until someone said, quietly, "Who made that song?" And Tala turned toward me. She did. I didn't speak. I didn't need to. Afterwards, at a small reception nearby, people filtered toward me slowly, like I was something to approach with care. Not fame, just gravity. One woman said, "I didn't know silence could make me feel that much." Another said, "It felt like something I'd forgotten but needed." I thanked them, smiled softly, let their words land without brushing them away. Then, near the end of the night, Tala handed me a small envelope. "Don't open this until you're alone," she said. So I waited. Took it back to my hotel, where the walls were thin and the heater made a dull clinking sound. I sat on the bed and opened it. Inside was a single Polaroid me in the studio a few nights before, hunched over the keys, eyes closed, headphones on, completely immersed. In my own world, and behind it, a note. "This is the first time I've seen someone build a cathedral out of pain. Keep building." Tala, I didn't cry. Not this time. Instead, I held that Polaroid like a relic. Proof. Not for the world. For myself. Back in New York, the work kept coming. Not in floods, but in trickles. A documentary wanted a short score. A meditation app asked for original ambient soundscapes. A theater company invited me to do sound design for a one-woman show. Each time, I said yes. Not because I was chasing the momentum, but because I finally understood something simple and powerful. I didn't need anyone's permission to be who I already was. I didn't tell my family. They found out anyway. One day in January, Bree forwarded me a message from our cousin Lucas. "Yo, is this Maren? I think her name was in the credits of that short film that went viral on Vimeo. Did she really make all those weird sounds that was low-key sick?" We both laughed. Bree replied, "Yes, that's her. Weird sounds are kind of her thing." A week later, I got a letter. Handwritten, thick paper, gold-trimmed envelope, the kind Grandma used for church invitations and Christmas thank yous. I opened it slowly, wary. Inside Maren, "I don't understand the kind of music you make. I still don't know what a producer does. Exactly. But I watched that video, and I cried. I'm sorry we didn't see you before. Grandma." It was the first apology I'd ever received in writing from anyone in my family, and the first time she'd addressed my work directly. I placed the letter next to Tala's Polaroid on my desk. Not as trophies, just reminders. That week, I walked into a music store I used to avoid. The kind where guys with ironic t-shirts and $1,000 headphones leaned over soundboards like they were sacred relics. I used to feel small there, like someone who didn't belong in their conversations about compressors and analog purity. This time, I walked in with my shoulders relaxed, looking for anything in particular a guy behind the counter asked. I smiled. No, just seeing what's new. He paused. Then his eyes widened slightly. Wait, are you Marin Adler? I blinked. Yeah. He grinned. I saw that film. My girlfriend made me watch it. That last track unreal. I chuckled, trying not to blush. Thanks. You should come to one of our producer showcases sometime. We host open listening nights upstairs. I nodded. Maybe I will. I left with a new mic and a secondhand tape recorder. And something else. Too. Something I hadn't felt in a long time. Welcome. That night. I messaged Tala again. I think I'm finally ready to make the EP. She sent back a heart emoji. Then, let's make it hurt. In the best way. So I began. Not with a strategy, not with a brand, just sounds. The clink of the hotel heater, the inhale before crying, a train passing too far to be useful. All of it. Mine. I named the EP Uninvited. And on the cover, I used a photo Bree took. Me in the studio, blurry, hunched over the keyboard like I belonged there. When it launched, I didn't tell my family. I didn't need to. They heard it anyway. The EP dropped quietly on a Wednesday. I didn't pay for promotion. I didn't hire a PR team or tease it with clips. I just uploaded it to all platforms at 3:03 a.m. and then went for a walk. No makeup, no shoes. Just me in an oversized coat and mismatched socks wandering down Franklin Avenue while the city yawned around me. The streets were empty except for a woman sweeping in front of a corner deli and a man standing silently with his eyes closed at a bus stop. It felt good to be unseen again. But on my own terms this time. I didn't expect much. Maybe a few listens. Maybe a friend texting me a flame emoji. But by mid-afternoon, I had over 30 messages from people I didn't know. One came from a girl in Finland who said Uninvited reminded her of the time she got locked out of her grandmother's house and cried in the snow. Another from a middle-aged man in Boston who admitted he hadn't cried in 12 years until track 4. They didn't ask me what it meant. They told me what it felt like. And that was better. Around 6 p.m., I got a call from Bree. Okay, so I know you didn't want fanfare, she said breathlessly. But I think you need to see this. She sent me a link. Someone had made a fan edit shots from Tala's short film synced to my song The Door You Didn't Hear Close. It had over 150,000 views in 10 hours. The comment section was full of people saying it felt like a prayer whispered after you gave up, or what it sounds like when grief finally softens. I watched the video once, then again, and I cried. Again. But it didn't feel like mourning this time. It felt like arrival. Later that night, Bree called again. I know this isn't your thing, she said, but the family's asking about you. I sighed. Now they all heard the EP. Some of them didn't even realize it was you until I told them. Let me guess. Now they're proud, sort of confused, mostly, but also curious. I hesitated. Curious doesn't equal respect. I know, but it's a start. Uncle Matt actually said your tracks reminded him of his time in the Navy. He called it the most emotional silence he's ever heard. I laughed. That's such a weird compliment. It is, she said. But he meant it. Then she got quiet. Also, Trisha sent a message. I froze. To you. No. To me. For you. She wanted to know if you'd be willing to come to Grandma's birthday. Just to talk. No speeches, no music, no drama. I didn't say anything right away. You don't have to say yes, Bree added. Just wanted you to know. I'll think about it. That night, I listened to Uninvited start to finish on my floor. Lights off, face turned toward the ceiling. I had no idea who I made it for anymore. Maybe myself. Maybe that girl in Finland. Maybe the part of me that still stood in a garage at age 9, waiting for someone to walk in and listen. A week passed. The EP hit 10,000 streams. A college professor reached out asking if he could use the tracks in his sound design course. Someone wrote an essay about the psychological tension in Adler's ambient structures. I felt strange reading that, like I was being talked about in a room I hadn't entered. Still, I didn't reply to Trisha until I saw the photo. Bree sent it on a Thursday afternoon. Grandma, sitting in her chair, her thin frame wrapped in a pink crocheted shawl, a small cake in front of her, balloons drooping slightly behind her head, and on her lap, a speaker, playing Ashes of Gold. She listens to it every morning now. Bree texted. She doesn't say much, just closes her eyes. I stared at the image, and for the first time, I felt at peace. Not the kind that screams or demands or earns anything, just the kind that settles. I called Trisha that night. She picked up on the first ring. Hi. Marin. Hi. A pause. I wasn't expecting you to call. I wasn't expecting to want to. She let out a quiet breath. I heard the EP. Lauren sent it to me. I didn't know it could be like that. Music. I mean, it can. I said. When you leave it alone, I owe you an apology. She said. For the wedding. For all of it. Really. I didn't see you. I leaned back, my fingers grazing the edge of my desk. Maybe you weren't looking. I wasn't, she admitted. But I am now. There wasn't much more to say after that. I agreed to visit for Grandma's birthday. No fanfare. No announcements. Just a seat at the table again. The morning of the visit, I printed a photo. Not of me, of her grandma, eyes closed, listening to my music. I framed it in a simple white border and brought it with me. When I walked through the door, the room fell quiet. A few cousins smiled nervously. An uncle nodded. Someone said, "Hey," Marin, like they didn't know what else to offer. I just smiled. Grandma looked up from her chair, eyes shining. "You came," she whispered. I did. She reached for my hand. We didn't talk much, just sat together. The sound of laughter. Forks against plates. Old memories stitched into the conversation like a worn quilt. No one brought up the wedding. No one asked about the EP. But I caught glimpses Lauren humming one of the tracks. My mom with her phone open, quietly showing someone my Spotify page. Trisha, clearing a plate, pausing to meet my eyes for a second too long, and then, as I stood to leave, Grandma handed me something. A cassette tape, labeled in shaky handwriting, Marin's piano, age 9. I found it last week, she said. I thought it was lost. My throat tightened. Thank you, I whispered. Outside, the air was cold but gentle. I sat in my car, cassette in hand, and didn't drive right away. I just held it. A recording of a girl they didn't hear, a voice they almost missed, and now undeniable. I didn't have a cassette player in my car, or anywhere in my apartment. Not anymore. The last one I owned had stopped working in college, and I'd tossed it without thinking twice. It felt, at the time, like shedding an old skin, one made of outdated wires and dusty buttons. But now, holding that tiny rectangle in my hand, I felt something different. Not nostalgia, not guilt, just continuity. A thread that had been tugged loose and now rested in my palm. I stopped at a thrift shop on my way back to Brooklyn. It was a cluttered maze of plastic bins, chipped teacups, tangled cords, and quiet regret. The woman behind the counter wore a knit beanie and didn't look up when I asked, "Do you have a cassette player?" She gestured toward the back. Electronics. Second shelf under the broken lamp. I found 3. One was missing a lid. Another had gum stuck inside the battery panel. The third black. Scratched. And surprisingly intact, had a sticker on the front that said $4 untested. I bought it. At home. I cleaned the dust off gently, loaded in the cassette, and pressed play. For a second, nothing. Then a soft hiss, a mechanical click, and then piano, tinny, hesitant, slightly off tempo, but there, clear, real. I closed my eyes. I remembered the song River Flows in You. I'd taught myself from a YouTube tutorial before it was ever cool to say you played by ear. I must have practiced it 200 times, waiting for someone to say it sounded beautiful. No one ever did. But now, listening, I could hear at the pauses where I doubted myself, the moments where my fingers found the right key and held it, like it was enough just to arrive. The tape played for 9 minutes. Near the end, I heard a voice, Grandma's, soft, far off. That's nice. Marin, keep playing, sweetheart. And then a door closed, and the sound cut off. I sat back, stunned. She'd heard me, at least once. That small sentence played on loop in my head, long after the tape stopped. Keep playing, sweetheart. I digitized the cassette that night, uploaded it to my laptop, cleaned the hiss as best I could, then added a soft ambient bed beneath it, something light, ghost-like, barely there, a sonic embrace. I titled the track Keep Playing, just that, no more. I didn't release it. Not yet. I just let it live on my hard drive, quietly. Some things don't need an audience to matter. The next morning, I received a package. No return label. Inside was a book hardcover, leather-bound, hand-stitched. A music journal. Pristine pages with soft lines and a small quote printed at the bottom of each page. I flipped to the front. A card tucked into the inner sleeve. For your next cathedral. I smiled. Tala had a way of knowing when the next step was already happening, even before I did. That evening, I sat by the window, snow brushing the edges of the glass, and opened the journal to the first page. I wrote only one line. I used to beg to be heard. Now I just listen. And somehow people follow the sound. In the following weeks, Uninvited reached 50,000 streams. One of the tracks was used in a short meditation film by a grief counselor. Another found its way onto a modern dance reel that went mildly viral on Instagram. Still, I kept it all quiet. I didn't post about numbers. I didn't screenshot milestones. I just kept making. I scored a new piece for Tala, a documentary about silence in female prisons. It was hard, beautiful, unforgiving. And when it premiered, a woman who'd spent 12 years behind bars came up to me and said, "That one track. That sounded like the feeling when you forget what your name means." We stood in silence for a long time after that. One night, Bree came over, wine in one hand and takeout in the other. She kicked off her boots, threw herself on my couch, and said, "So, when are you going to make a full album?" I blinked. "I just made an EP. "Yeah, but that was the warning shot. Now it's time for the cathedral." I laughed. "I don't even know what it would be about." She shrugged. "Everything you didn't say at that wedding." I didn't answer. But that night, after she left, I opened the journal again, wrote track 1. The table they didn't set for me. That weekend, I got another message from Trisha. Just a photo. Grandma, holding a framed print. The cassette cover I'd made. Her eyes were wet. Her smile was soft. The caption read, "Thank you for playing." I didn't reply. I just saved the photo and tucked it into the front of the music journal. Weeks passed. The noise faded. The world moved on. but I didn't feel behind anymore. In March, I played live for the first time in years. It was a small art space in Red Hook. 40 seats, no stage, just a rug, a keyboard, a fog machine someone forgot to turn off. The lighting flickered, the mic buzzed. It was perfect. I told no one from the family, no posts, no invites, just word of mouth. When I started playing, I didn't introduce myself. I just hit a single key and let the sound grow, layered it with loops, breaths, tape hisses, that one echo from the cassette that sounded like grandma's door closing. The audience didn't move, not when I ended, not when I looked up, until a single voice whispered. Again I smiled. I played again. And this time, I added the final track, Keep Playing. When it finished, I stood slowly, looked out at the room, and said, nothing, because I didn't need to. I walked off the rug, wrapped my scarf around my neck, and slipped into the cold night air. And for the first time in my life, I didn't wonder if I had been seen. I knew I had been heard.